Okay. Hi, and welcome to another installation of this crafting thing that I'm doing. So, I know last time I was like, maybe I'll separate them both and do knitting separate from all of my other crafts. Oh, rephrase. Let's start out with who I am. Hi, I'm Kathy Turnbull. Welcome to my knitting channel. I'm knitting and crafting channel. Um, If you're here, I'm sure you've stumbled this on surprise. So, welcome. Hope you enjoy my space. It's as cluttered as everything that you can see behind me. Yeah, I don't live my life in nice, neat aesthetics. Unless you count like busy and aesthetic. In that case, I've got that nailed. So, yeah, welcome to the general chaos of my life. At least my crafting life. And probably my general life too. So, today's a holiday, so I can film this real fast before I get busy again next week, because I'm going away for the weekend. And then when I come back, I've got things to prepare for work and stuff, so like this is probably the best time for me to film this. I think I introduced myself. Hi, I'm Kathy. This is Turnbull's Threads, I believe. I don't actually know what I called it. It's either Turnbull's Twisters or Turnbull's Threads. Me plus yarn thready kind of stuff. You get the idea. So I am in southeastern Louisiana, New Orleans. It's hot. It's been hot. It's been really, really, really hot. But it's finally cooling down, which makes me extremely happy. Although, because it is cooling down, there are more hurricanes in our neck of the woods. So I've been paying a lot more attention to the National Hurricane Center this last month. Yay. Which reminds me, to all the people in Florida, if you ever happen to watch this, praying for you guys with the hurricane that just came through, and hope that nothing too bad happened to anybody down there. Anyways, back to, I guess, what I was talking about. It's been hot. It's been hot, hot, hot. So I've been doing, surprisingly, I've been doing a lot of knitting. Mostly because I checked a book out of my library. From my library, and it had patterns, and I wanted to do some of those patterns before I had to turn the book in. So I've been doing knitting from that book in particular this last little bit. But yep, so live in southeastern Louisiana. Other things, I'm a knitter. I've been a knitter for quite a while. I haven't gotten quite as into it as I have been until roughly the last year and a half. I started branching out, doing more different types of projects, actually trying to be involved in a knitting community. I didn't really know that there was a knitting community online until probably about a year ago. So trying to be a little bit more involved, meet people who like to do the same things I do, be slightly less antisocial, and I guess this is a way for me to do it. So yeah, I'm going to talk about my general crafting on today's episode with kind of a focus on knitting. The knitting will happen first, so if you don't actually want to see anything else that I've been doing craft-wise, art-wise, I'll probably put a little time stamp. Be like, hey, this is where all the other stuff went. But we will start out with knitting and kind of things that I have here. So told you who I am, where I am, what I do. I haven't told anybody that yet on here, I don't think. I'm a scientist currently. PhD student. Work in a lab, do a bunch of experiments. So crafting is like my creative outlet for comparing it to all of the like numbers and other stuff that I do where I don't get to be really creative. Like, you can be somewhat creative in like how you think about experiments or like coming up with ideas. I can't tell you how many times I've been walking around like mulling over a problem, trying to figure out the solution to it, and then as you walk around not thinking about it, all of a sudden you're like, oh, brilliant idea. That's how I should do that. Aha. And then you have to get back to your desk so that you can write it down so that you don't forget it before you have to do it. Yes. Like I said, my general life, chaos. But notwithstanding that element of creativity that is involved with science, there's obviously a lot more rigidity. You have to be a little bit more meticulous about some of your note taking and like how you do things, making sure you do them in a specific way, in a repeatable way, so that other people can do the same thing after you, kind of thing. And that you're actually getting good data and like looking at the data and being like, okay, this makes sense, this is logical, while knitting and all my other stuff is a lot less tedious for me, I guess. It allows me to be much more creative in a way, and how I think about things, and like creating art and new things, and not like building on knowledge or trying to define something. So that's who I am, that's what I do. General outline should be fairly the same. I typically skip the acquisitions unless it's like for a new project. So I think how I've been doing it is like plan project. Ooh, I think I don't have one of them with me. I might have to pop out and come back quickly. I may edit that out. Be like, here, edit here, edit here. And actually get one of them because I don't have it. I tried to collect most of the things, but obviously I forgot something. So, anyways, we'll do things that I've done so far, things that I'm working on, and then things that I know that I'm going to be doing in the near future. Yeah, we'll do it that way. Completed working on, things that I will be working on. And then I'll switch and we'll talk a little bit about some of the other crafting things that I've been doing that have not been knitting related in any way, shape, or form. So, now that we've gotten the tedious administrative stuff done for this channel, let's start talking about some of the things that I've finished in the last month. It's only been a month since I last filmed. So, like I said, I borrowed a book from the library, and because I borrowed the book, I've been knitting all of the patterns that I found interesting in the book that I had yarn pretty much in stock with. There was one project that I went out and actually bought some yarn for. But other than that, I've been trying to pull from my stash and things, and it's been working out decently well. So I borrowed Knitting Through the National Parks, and it's a book that has a bunch of different beanies that have been inspired by the different national parks. So I've been knitting my way through the things that I've been interested in that particular book. Most of them are not... I've been doing a lot of the textured knits from that and not so much the colorwork knits from that, because I was more interested in the textural knits than the colorwork knits. Also, I knew I had yarn that I could easily substitute for the textural stuff. Colorwork, a little bit more tricky. So, speaking of that, I have a notebook here, yay, my knitting notebook, which tells me exactly what the pattern is, so that I can inform all of you exactly what the pattern is as I bring them up. And any notes that I had on it. Also important things. So, the first thing that I completed in the month of August was this beanie. See? Isn't it pretty? It's not blocked. So, it does need blocked. All of the beanies that I have made so far need blocked. Because I haven't done that yet, because I've been furiously knitting them and not worrying about the next step. That needs to change soon. But, anyways, so this is the Olympic Washington hat pattern from the Knitting the National Parks book. I used Malabrigo dos Tierras in the colorway Lettuce. And my notes for this one say it was a quick workup. Word of caution, the lace chart isn't exactly accurate, like totally accurate. It's mostly accurate, but once you get into the decreasing area for the crown area, there's a couple of mistakes within the knitting chart. So you do have to fudge a little bit with it to get it to actually work out and as you're knitting it. And this particular hat I actually knit a size larger. So I knit these on size 6 and 8 needles instead of the 5 and 7 it called for, because why did I make that choice? I think it was because those were the ones that I had immediately available. And I could easily find, and so I just used them. I figured it wouldn't be too much of a difference, and it's not too much. I will have to be careful when I block it, like the brim area, to make sure it doesn't grow too much. But having that size up does make it a little bit bigger than it would be otherwise. But this one, I also think I wanted it to be a little bit more like floppy, so less like tight beanie wise. Like it is a beanie, but a little bit more floppy, and the lace kind of lends itself to that. So using the larger needles would give me a little bit more of a drapier hat thingy instead of necessarily a beanie thingy. So that is the Olympic Washington. I enjoyed it. Like I said, the only thing that a little bit bugged me about this was that the lace chart, especially when you were starting to decrease for the top, wasn't quite accurate. So there were a couple of places where I was like, I think this is where it is. Like, I have an extra stitch, but I know that I was supposed to make that stitch, and I don't know. We'll figure it out, kind of thing. So, yes. Enjoyed it. Would I do it again? No, but that's because I don't need another beanie in that particular color in that way. I do think it was quite enjoyable though. The next one that I knit was this guy. So this is Lassen, Volcanic, California. And so she was going for like trying to get the forms of the volcanic formations, the little whirls in, which it does turn out. It looks really neat. So I knit this using Audine wool's Mellow by Knitcrate, and I ended up so it calls for a worsted weight yarn. The weight of yarn that I used for it in reality is more of a bulky weight, and so this made for interesting. This hat I ripped back. Ooh, how many times did I rip it back? I think I ripped it back 3 times. Because I didn't have enough yarn. I didn't want to use more than one skein for any of these hats. And it gives you like the option of having like a folded over brim underneath, and I was planning on doing that, except I had a bulky yarn instead of a worsted weight yarn, which meant that I had less yardage in my skein than I would otherwise have. And 2 to 4 inches is significant when compared to about the 1 inch brim that I ended up having to knit in order to like only keep it at one skein. And this used up pretty much all of the yarn. So it was a little bit more complicated, obviously, than the other one was. It has some bobbly kind of effects in it. There's a lot more increasing and decreasing, although there is less lace because it's more of a texture pattern. Let's see. I did like how the yarn felt. It was really nice yarn, but it I will say about the Audine Wool's Mellow yarn, like it was somewhat annoying as I was trying to grab it because it split really easily. So getting a clean stitch was much more of a problem with this than I have had with really any of my other knits. And then like the other hat, there's a couple of accidents in terms of how their knit chart was laid out. They forget stitches or they put stitches in the wrong place. So yeah, you have to play what's right versus what's written in the pattern a couple of times. Nothing too bad though. So that brings me to the third hat that I knit, which is this one. So this one is be nice and look at the whole thing. Ah, there we go. Okay. Ah, ha, ha, ha. So this is the Joshua Tree, California, from obviously the same one. I used those Malabrigos, those Tierras, the reflecting pool colorway for this. I do think I actually knit this in a slightly smaller gauge than they called for. I think I ended up using like 5 and 6 instead of 5 and 7. Once again, I think I didn't know where my 16 inches were. Or where my interchangeable ones were. They might have been with another project at the time. So it is a little bit smaller. It's gonna, when I block it out, it'll help a lot. I will say that I can't say that I'm a huge fan of baubles. And there are a lot of baubles in this hat, as you could tell, like on the edge of the trees. So that did not make me as enthused as I could have been about this project. I like the details and how they look afterwards, but actually doing them is a pain. And it feels like it takes forever to make any progress because of that. But I made it through. I have the hat. I actually like how the crown turned out. So that crown decrease style I really liked. I like that detail. And even doing it on the pearl background, like, beautiful. But I don't think I had really any issues with this pattern. Yeah, my only note wasn't enthused about the baubles when I finished it. So yeah, in the future, I think I'm like, if I pick a pattern with baubles, I'm gonna try and make sure that there's a bunch more other stitches and not quite as many baubles. Oh, that brings me, well, my next page is a works in progress, which I'm excited about and I will tell you about, but it's not one of my completed ones, so we're gonna skip it for now. So the next one that I finished is the Desert Valley, California hat. So, there we go. And that actually looks pretty close to color. So this is obviously inspired by Desert Valley, California. The yarn that I used was the Malabrigo dos Tierras in the color Plomo. Like some of the other ones, there's a couple of errors in the knitting chart that you do have to pay attention to. Mostly the places where they end up having errors is as you're decreasing, where like you're supposed to add a niche or add a stitch, and adding the stitch is important, but they don't keep it in the next round up, and so like all of a sudden your counts don't match. And then you go up 2 rows and all of a sudden they're decreasing, and if you didn't keep that stitch that you had added in the previous one, the decrease doesn't make any sense. Yeah, so figuring it out was a little annoying, but it was a pretty enjoyable knit. I like this yarn. I like how the variegations are with it. I have to admit I do have liked knitting with the Malabrigo dos Tierras. It's a really nice yarn to work with, doesn't split easy. nice hand feel. Enjoyed. Then we come to the next hat that I knit, which was the Carlsbad Caverns, New Mexico one. And I have to say, I really, really love this one. No. Come on, focus. There we go. We're focusing. Okay. So, this is done in Malabrigo's Caprino in the colorway Archangel. And so kind of like the Volcano one that we talked about just previously, where I used a bulky instead of a worsted. This is technically a DK instead of a worsted. So blocking, I will need to block it and make it a little bit bigger. But I love the feel of this yarn. So the Malabrigo Caprino one is the one where it has merino and some cashmere in it, and it is lovely to work with. I love knitting this up. I can't say more about that. And I actually really love the colorway for this one. The like reds and the purples and the yellows. Like, it's just a gorgeous yarn. I love it. So I know it doesn't highlight some of the like texture of this one. So the obviously Carlsbad Caverns, there's stalactites, stalagmites, and that's kind of what the pattern's trying to highlight here. The fact that I used a slightly more textured yarn in terms of color doesn't highlight the like texture that I put into the pattern in here. But I feel like the colors were perfect for the Caverns, so it's very much a struggle in my soul on that one. But I used it. I really enjoyed it. I really loved how this turned out. Loved working with the yarn. It is going to need a little bit of blocking to make it the right size, but it should stretch out. It'll be fine. And on this one, happily, the chart is correct for the whole thing. So there's no like guessing, and there's no like, I have an extra stitch that I didn't have before, or there's a stitch that I made that doesn't show up in the chart. What am I supposed to do? No, all the stitches were correct in this chart. So yes, loved it. Love the pattern. Love the yarn. And that's all I'm going to say about that at this point. So then I have one more completed hat. Obviously, this particular episode is all about the hats. Because they've all got to be knit before the book goes back in like 3 weeks. So the last one that I did was Mesa, Verde, Colorado. And I actually used remnants from the other two hats that I did, right? So the Malabrigo Reflecting Pool and Plomo. Because I didn't want to break out new ones for it. Technically, this pattern should have a much darker contrast so that you can see the differences from far away. But I didn't. And I actually really like the product. So, meh, whatever. So, I'll bring it up. Hopefully it'll focus. Yes. Okay, so you can see you have your brim in a contrasting color, and then so like all of those spots where it's currently blue technically should have been white according to the pattern, so that like they really showed up. Obviously didn't do that. There is some contrast between the blue and the gray, but it's a very minor contrast. So like far away, all you can tell is like really that the brim is different, and then the top kind of fades together, which I'm actually fine with. I like that. So this was actually my first time doing kind of an extended color work. I've done one blanket where I did like you alternated colors every other stitch. So not really color work, not anything where you needed to follow a pattern. So this is the first time I've done it. I like how it turned out. You can tell that my gauge, yeah, I definitely need to block it to kind of make everything work out correctly. But I was actually fairly happy with my floats on this one. So you can see, especially since this is my first time doing color work. So at the bottom, they're a little, yeah, they're a little rougher. But as you go up, you can see I get more comfortable, and then by the time I get to the top, I'm fairly comfortable with the floats. So I learned a lot in how to do this one. Tried the two different ways of like doing color work, right? So I'm a continental knitter, so I generally hold my yarn with my left hand, and that's how I've always controlled it, and so that's where I feel most comfortable with. But for this, I think I was working on like figuring out how to use both hands to control the yarn. And yeah, I was having tension issues. Having tension issues is so annoying. And also it really hurt, like it was painful in my right hand, which I don't know why. I have no idea why. Maybe it's how I was holding it, or maybe I was doing something weird. So I tried kind of so I started out holding them in two different hands, continued to have tension issues. Then I moved it over to tried doing it both on the one hand and still had some tension issues. So I went back and forth a couple of times. I don't remember what I ended up doing totally. Definitely need more practice with it. I do think that I will continue to do some color work stuff, especially since I have a really big sweater that's supposed to be color work, that I have yarn for and a pattern for, so it will happen. But yeah, I do need to figure out like what's going to be most comfortable for me, and I might need to like invest in a yarn holder maybe for doing it on my left hand, just to like help with the tension, because I think that was the main thing that was frustrating me the most with this, was that I was having problems with tension for my two colors, because there were like significant floats that you were doing, and then you would twist yarn around, so you would do 3 to 4 stitches and then twist your yarn because you were floating for like 10 stitches on some of the patterns in here. And so like doing that, I was having like, it would go off in tension and either be too tight or too loose. So yeah, it needs more practice, essentially. It needs more practice. I need to do it more. And obviously I need to block this so that it fits right and looks right, and it'll help even out some of the things, like I have that little bubble because that is non-color work area, so it didn't actually have too many floats to pull it in while all these other areas did. Yeah, so I need to block it out so that it'll be more normal. Sounds so weird, but yes, so that it's more normal, so that it basically, so that it lies flat, it fits right. But yeah, that was all I had on this. Enjoyed it. I will do more color work. I need to figure out how to do color work more comfortably. We shall see. We shall see. So that covers all of the knits that I completed in the month of August. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I knit 6 beanies in August. I'm pretty happy with that. That's pretty fast. Especially considering I was still doing knitting on other things, which is why I have multiple works in progress still to talk about. So, now that I have talked about, obviously, all of my completed items, we'll talk about the 3 whips that I have. So, one of them I just started. One of them I did show in the last video. And I have another one that I just started. So, let's talk about the one that you all have seen before. So, I talked about, I'm doing this thing where I'm trying to take some patterns from various different decades, knit them up, kind of to see how knitting directions can be, how are like different as you go back in time, and also to kind of give myself, like, I pulled things that I thought I would like from these different decades, and I want to see if I, one, do like them, and 2, if I will actually wear them after I've made them. So, like, give me an idea of kind of where my aesthetic is, like, do I need to be looking only at modern patterns, or should I be looking at some of the more vintage patterns? Like, which ones kind of draw me is kind of the idea behind this. So, saying that, what is this, my 2000s? I haven't gotten that far. I did a pattern from the 2020s. I've done a pattern from the 2010s. I think this is a pattern from the 2000s. So, it's called the Trellis Shell, and obviously it's a pullover, and you knit it in 2 pieces and then you seam it together. So, I am very happy to say that I have now finished the front piece, yay, 1, and the back piece. Yay! So I have finished the front and the back. I'm quite happy with the fact that I have finished the front and back. It took a while. So now I need to block these as well as my hats. Obviously I need to have like a huge blocking party because I have a bunch of hats that need blocked. I have these that need blocked. Yeah. All the blocking. But so once these are blocked, then I'll seam it up, and it should be, well, seam it up, and then I think I need to add some details to the armholes. I think they tell you to single crochet around them. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that. I might modify it. I might potentially pick up and knit a very teeny tiny rib around the armholes. But we'll see. We'll see. That's a future me problem. That's not a current me problem. Current me problem is blocking these things. So I was using Darn Goods Yarn Deep K Sport Twist, I think, in springtime, which I don't think is available anymore. I wasn't sure how I was going to like the color, how it worked up, because it is a very pink yarn. And pink typically isn't my favorite color. Typically. But I actually really like how this one turned out. It has like green, yellow, and blue as the contrasting color that it spins around, and the pink is deep enough that it's almost a red. It actually in certain ones will change into like a dark red, so like really dark pink to red. So I actually do kind of like how the fabric looks. So we do have to block it out and see what it ends up looking like. Tune in next time. Hopefully I will have blocked things at that point in time. Always hope. Hope reigns eternal. So yes, that was my first work in progress, which is almost a completed work. Like, there's really not any more knitting, minor knitting that might need done. But yeah, it's not a completed object either. So that's works in progress number 1. Brings me to work in progress number 2. So the second thing that I had been working on is an original design. I'm gonna call it probably the Cypress tee or the Cypress tunic, something like that. So kind of the idea was I wanted to have something somewhat form-fitting up here, and then like it spreads underneath. So that meant that I planned on doing essentially a circle underneath there. So yes, maths were involved. There has been much mathing involved in this. So the way I'm doing it is I'm using 2 different yarns together, right? So I have this crumb cotton by Hoops and Threads that I got at Michael's. It's a bulkier weight. Let's see, what exactly do they call this? And they call this a medium, but they also tell you to use a US 10. So I'd put this on the higher end of a medium, closer to a bulky if you're using a US 10 on it. Throwing that out there. So I had this, wasn't exactly my favorite color. So I decided to use this with it so that it would kind of spice things up. So this is the Darn Good Yarn Twist Sport Weight Silk Yarn in Tropical Jungle that I actually got in one of my monthly packs, and I really like the color. So I didn't have a ton of this. I only had about 3 things of it, which now that I've only gotten this far through, I need more. And I have ordered more. So I hopefully will have enough to finish the thing. So what I'm doing, right, is it's going to be a bottom up. And I cast on so many stitches. Because in order to do it like a circle, right, I calculated out the radius, and then at the gauge that I was supposed to be hitting, which I generally hit gauge, like the suggested gauge, that's usually where about I knit. So yes, I didn't do a like actual count. I could count this now, but I'm not going to, because gauge swatching is something I just don't want to do. It's a life choice. It's sometimes a poor life choice, but it is a life choice. So I like the 2 color, like I like the one color, but not really by itself. It's a little bit too plain for me by itself, so I needed something to spice it up. So I threw the other one in, but I didn't have a ton of the other ones. So I was like, how do I solve this problem? I can't hold them both together for the entire thing because I don't have enough. So thinking creatively, what should I do? And my response to that was, okay, well, what I can do is I can knit 1 row in the main color, and then I can knit them both together in the next row. And then the row after that, I'll carry one of the stitches, so I'll do a knit slip, knit slip, knit slip, knit slip. And then after that row, we'll do the main color again. So I'm using so much of this right now. I have already gone through 150 grams, 150 gram ball of this. And I've gone through most of a 50 gram ball of this at this point. And I only have like, let's see here. 1, 2, 3. I have about 4 inches, I think, on here. so far. 4 inches, and I have used a ton of yarn at this point because I decided to do a circle, right? So circle around and then it'll fall and it should provide drape. Hopefully, we shall see. This might be too heavy. I don't know. We'll find out. I also haven't knit quite as much on it recently because it does have a pretty harsh hand feel. So, like, I can only do a couple of rounds before the cotton yarn on this one actually hurts to knit with, and then I have to switch to something else that's a little bit easier on my hands. But yeah, I actually really like how that fabric is turning out, though. I will say that. Focus camera. Yeah. Okay, yes, we've focused. So you get like spots because of the contrasting color. You get spots of light and you also get spots of dark, and because you're holding the two together, it's kind of somewhat random when they show up. And yeah, it does kind of remind me of southeastern Louisiana, we have a bunch of bald cypress trees right outside. So it kind of reminds me of like what all the leaves look like as they kind of poke through in the sky. So yeah, bald cypress. Yes, I have a plan. I have a loose plan, right? So I have a plan for getting up to the underbust, and then I think I have a plan for how I'm going to do. I think I'm going to do a band, like a wave, like a cable band underneath. So it's going to get up to the underbust, and then I'm going to cast on a couple stitches, and then I'm going to knit this way. And then once I've knit this way and kind of ended up grafting that, and then you'll pick up stitches on the top and finish out the top off of those picked up stitches. But I haven't gotten that far yet. Like, this is an idea in my head of how this possibly might work out. We haven't gotten that far yet. Like, my goal right now is to get up, right? So get up to that point where I have to make a decision and, like, how to do it construction-wise. I feel like an evil genius with this one because it is very much I had some plan. I did a bunch of math. I measured things. I did a bunch more math. I think I did my math right. I had to fudge some numbers in order to like get the math to work out the way I needed it to work out. And then I started knitting. And we've gotten a short ways, and I'm like, so much more knitting is involved in my future. So much more. So yes, this is one of my works in progress. I'm interested. I want to see how it turns out. This may be a super fail, and I will have to repurpose this yarn for other things, but I think it'll be something cool looking. I think. So yeah, second work in progress. There's obviously no pattern because I am making it up on the fly. And it's unlikely to have a pattern anytime soon because it's taking a while to do, because it involves a lot of knitting. I think I cast on something like 550 stitches to start with. If that gives you an idea. It's supposed to get down to 120, like 120 I think at some point. So yes, we've been working on that slowly but surely. So those are two of my works in progress, and my last work in progress is this one. So once again, one of the Knitting the National Parks. This is the pattern White Sands. And actually I've really enjoyed this detail. Like learning how to do this detail. The little ridge. Because now I'm having ideas about how I could use this technique in potentially creating some other patterns, and like not doing a full ridge thing, but like maybe you could use it in like a diamond pattern. So because you pick up and knit stitches from a certain distance below where you're working, and you knit them together in order to like cinch them, right? So if you were to do somewhat the same idea, but instead of doing it continuously in the round, if you were to do it in like a diamond pattern, if you could create like kind of a blousey-ish material, not quite smocking, but like, you know, some of those like really nice leather upholstery chairs, right? And you get those diamond patterns where the buttons kind of create little poofs. Granted, you do have like stuffing and stuff that's helping push it out, but like you could potentially do that with some. We'll see. I have ideas. I don't know if these ideas are stupid ideas or ideas that will not do anything, will not go anywhere. But yes, I have ideas. And obviously this was the one where I did buy yarn for it. Because I didn't have colors that were easily accessible where I knew things were. Because I think I have some yarn that I would have enjoyed using, other yarn that I would have used instead of this, but I don't know where it is and I can't find it easily. So, yeah. We bought new yarn for it. And my yarn balls are falling apart already. Yay. So that is all of my works in progress. I'm going to hopefully make this a pause where I edit things out so that I can grab the last project that I need to before we talk about things that I am going to be knitting. And I'm back! Haha! Exciting news. Okay, so now we're going to talk about things that I will be knitting. Now and in the near future. So the first thing that I have planned is since the trellis shell is like almost done. We're gonna do the next decade, which is the 90s, I think? Yeah, 1990s. So I'm going to pull out this pattern. So I'm doing Twilight Lace by Laura Wallens, and I'm going to be using this pretty yarn. So this yarn, if it will cooperate and actually focus on the yarn instead of other things in the background, because why would it? Ugh. Focus. And I guess that's as good as you're getting for that focus. So this is another darn good yarn lace, and silk lace in blue ombre, I believe it is. I should have. Ombre recycled silk yarn, lace weight, in the color blue. It's blue. So I think that'll be fun. It'll be a lace, basically a rectangle lace that ends in a point. I don't really have more to say about it than that. I think it'll be fun. I've done one lace pattern. I enjoyed it. So hopefully I enjoyed this lace pattern as much as I did that one. We'll find out. But yes, that needs to get on my needles probably this month. So that will be changing into a work in progress fairly soon. The next thing that I'm going to talk about is these guys. Oh, I don't have their information on it. Oh well. So I went to Gulfport, Mississippi, this last month to go see the aquarium, which I enjoy aquariums. I enjoy aquariums a lot. That was not my favorite aquarium. And I'm like, It's an okay aquarium, but it's not my favorite aquarium, nor is it an aquarium that I have a burning desire to go back and see again. So I probably won't go back to that aquarium again. But while I was there, I found out that there was a like a local knitting shop, and so it's like an hour away. So obviously I had to stop by and see what kind of yarn they had, if there was anything I wanted to get. So I went in and I was like, okay, if I'm gonna get a yarn here, I would like to get a yarn actually. I wanted to get something local. I wanted it to be something where I could make a decent project out of it, so I went for socks because I have this book, which I think a lot of people have. Yes. So I went in at some of these patterns with some sock yarn. So I need sock yarn to knit socks. So while I was there, the owner was in that day and she was talking about some of the bases, and this is actually one of her new bases. It's an alpaca sock base, and we're going to see how it works out. This is only going to be like my third pair of socks that I've ever knit. So, not an especially accomplished sock knitter, but I really... the alpaca sock base is super soft. Very, very soft. Loved how soft it was. So that kind of drew me toward it. And then this particular colorway I think is the platinum something, and so it's obviously like a gray. Ugh. Come on, do this, and then nope, it still wants to not focus very well. Try these. Stop focusing on things in the back. Like, I literally can't get it to focus on this. It is fuzzy, so that might be part of the reason why. But this particular base obviously is the light gray, kind of speckled. It does light gray, dark gray. But inside some of these, there's also some other color speckles. So it has some blues in there and a couple of reds that I can see and yellow. Just peeking out briefly. So I think this will turn out to be an interesting pair of socks. So I'm planning on using this for one of the little bit more textured set, since it is like, yes, there are speckles, but it is a fairly mild base compared to some of the other yarns that I have, especially sock yarns that I have that are a little bit more bold. So these should really show up some of those patterns really well, and I'm looking forward to that. I just need to get needles. Yeah. I was actually looking at the patterns today and I was like, so I don't actually have, like, I have needles a size bigger than what you're asking for, but I don't actually have the needles that you asked for in this particular pattern. Fine. So yeah, bought some sock knitting needles today. Hopefully they will come in by the end of the week. So I plan on casting a pair of socks on before the next time that I chat with everybody. So socks in my future. And they should be really nice socks. So yes, I am looking forward to that. And then the final thing that I have that will be starting up very soon is I actually got selected to do a test knit. Yay, for the first time. I will say this, I just started like putting my name out there for a potential test knit, and I did get chosen to do a hat, the Stripes and Bridges hat by, who's it by? Anaplexus. So I'm going to be knitting that up, and I'm not going to say too much more about it before the pattern comes out. I do have all of this month to knit things up, so it should be coming out by the end of September. And I will be posting a couple of in progress probably pictures on Instagram, but the final reveal obviously won't happen before the pattern maker has released her pattern out into the world. But I can show you what yarn I chose to do it with. So I wanted to pick some stuff from my stash because I have a fairly extensive stash. So they wanted fingering weights, and you have a dark color and a light color contrast in this particular hat. So these are the colors that I have chosen. So I have had both of these in my stash. They're Zen Yarn Garden colors, and I have one in Mystic Ocean and the other one is Blue Hawaii. And they are lighter and darker. It's not a super huge contrast between the two, but there's a decent contrast. And then there's like colors that somewhat mix in between the two of them. So I think it'll make a fun, good looking hat. And I'm excited to see about like actually doing the test knit thing and like how it works out. Following patterns and trying to help someone else as they get a pattern to kind of give to everybody else. So yeah, that's my last thing that should be completed by the next time I talk with y'all. So, yep, that is the extent of my knitting content that will be talked about on this channel this week, or this month. So, if you are not interested in sticking around for the rest of the content, this is the time to leave. For those of you who are interested in other things besides knitting, I have a little bit of cross stitch to talk about, several watercolors to talk about, and I have that copper thing that I've been working on to talk about. Yes, so buckle up, we'll get started as soon as I get some more to drink. Okay, so first things first, other craft things that I've done. I'm gonna do my watercolors first because I actually have to go behind me for one of them. I have it on my wall and I am very proud of it, and I am very happy to let everybody see what I just did. So, I know I talked the last time about this one in terms of I had prepped the paper and I had done the background for it, and that was it. So the thing that I was prepping the background for was I was gonna do Isaiah 53. So Isaiah 53, the entire chapter. And I don't know, can you see? It's kind of hard to see. So there's obviously some accents, so most of the words have how to go about this. So yes, this took forever to first letter out. So we went ahead, we made the form for everything. And then we picked how we were going to letter everything. So I decided that I wanted to emphasize God in this particular chapter. So anything that was referring kind of directly to him, so Lord, he, his, all of those words were going to be in a different type font. So I did those in a different font than I did all of the rest of the words. And then, like if it was kind of a possessive pronoun, so his, I decided that because it was related to the Lord, I was going to do the accents, even though the like lettering would be different than the his. So the his is different than the second word. I was going to make the accents the same so that they would be accent color the same so that they would kind of tie in together. So I ended up deciding to do all of the words referring to God in kind of a green tone. And I did more of an Irish-ish calligraphy for that. So if you're looking at the words, let's see, where is, like, there, right? Lord. So the word Lord is in a different font than the rest of the line is. So the rest of the line is more of a cursive. So all of them ended up being more of an Irish one. And then if you look at the accents on it, so the accents on words relating to the Lord were in gold, while the regular words were in a green kind of accent. So yeah, I enjoyed doing it. I am really happy with how it turned out. It took forever. It took so long. And if you're actually interested in seeing like time lapses of me sitting on the floor and either lettering or doing accents or anything like that, it is available on my Instagram. So you can go and find reels on Instagram at Kay and Turnbull too, and you can see me actually working on this bag boy. It took a long time, but I am so pleased with how it turned out. I think it looks gorgeous. And my spacing worked out really well, and it all fits, which is also something that worked out. And even in the areas where I didn't think that I was going to be quite right, it doesn't look wrong. So yes, this was the first thing that I finished. I'm very proud of it. Hopefully I can get this up without, yes, good, destroying anything in my room. Boop. Yes, so now it's in my office. Now it hangs in my office. Isn't it pretty? I'm gonna end up filling up my wall with like calligraphy and art at this rate. So yeah, that was the first thing that I finished in like the last 2 months, and I am very pleased with it. But that's not the only thing that I finished recently in terms of like watercolor stuff. So let me pull out some of the other things that I have done. So the two things. So the first one that I finished was this one. And let's see if I do this. Oh, it's trying so hard to focus, but it's not really able to. Okay, so I have a rose written out, and then obviously I did a watercolor of a roses, which I really enjoyed doing. This one was fun. And then not much longer after that, I did this set. So my thistle, which are a continuation of some of the botanical ones that I've been doing. So this was actually the first that I did, my daffodil. And I will say this, that I did, so I started out with the daffodil. And then I did the rose, because that was one of the suggestions for one of the things that I should do next. So appropriate, did it. And then I was looking for another that I wanted to do, and my thistle showed up. And so I was reasonably sure that I knew something about the thistle. So I do have some Scottish heritage, so I know a little bit about some things. And I was reasonably sure that the thistle was the national flower of Scotland. And so I wanted to make sure. So I Googled it because Google knows everything. And it is indeed the flower of Scotland. So I was like, yay! Throwing back. And while I was doing that, I also found out some interesting facts about the rose and the daffodil. So if you are interested, you can look up national flowers and figure out whose national flowers the rose, the daffodil, and the thistle belong to, and you can probably figure out what my next botanical is going to be, because once I figured out that I had done something accidentally, I was like, I must complete this. I will get the full set. So it will be a series of 4 botanicals, and you know the first 3, so it shouldn't be too hard to figure out what that 4th one is. If you do figure it out, feel free to leave a comment below and let me know that you know what I'm going to be doing next in that realm of my creativity. But yep, that was pretty much all of the watercolors that I did this month. I'm probably going to do this next. So in the last 2 months, I also worked a little bit on this guy. So I think the last time I talked to you, I had some of this done and not that much else. So I've gotten some of the houses kind of stenciled in, and I've got pretty much all of the braille done on this. Obviously, I have so much more space to do. So yes, I have a lot more work to do on this one. And then now that I've done this, I also need to kind of figure out how to, because as soon as you like put dents in, right, it's taking the material, but it's not like just thinning it, it's also kind of distorting the material. So obviously on my unworked area, it's still fairly flat. This is not flat. So I need to figure out how I'm going to basically flatten it down, I think. Once I've finished adding all of the different things to it, because it's gonna need something to make it not curl as much as it is curling, because it is curling quite a bit right now. Hasn't been a huge priority. It makes a ton of noise. It involves me taking a hammer to things and making loud noises. It's great for stress. It's not great necessarily if you have neighbors. And I do have neighbors. So that brings me to my final project that I have been working on, which is this guy. And you can tell that I have just recently changed the view on you, so you can't actually see what I've completed. So let me do a little bit of scrolling. So this is one of the other fiber crafts that I do, right? So I do obviously a bunch of knitting, but I also do embroidery and cross stitch, and I do some sewing and some quilting, and some of those have not been touched in the last couple of months. But I have been working on my cross stitch, because my cross stitch is something that is fairly easy to do when it is hot. So it doesn't require that you have a bunch of stuff in your lap, so that's very nice for me. So I have been working on this. This is one of those things where I like do it and then I forget about it, and then I come back to it and I do some more, and then I forget about it for like a year, and then I remember that I have it and I need to do it and I want to finish it, so I come back to it and I work on it again. The story Footsteps, it's the cross stitch pattern for that. And so I've managed to now finish the bottom half. So this is all cross stitched and back stitched, and I didn't do any chain. That's a lie. I have a couple of accidental stitches where I did a different color, but it's like 1 or 2, and it's not something super obvious, so I don't care. And you can't tell anyways where I made the mistakes, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, so I'm really happy with how it's turning out so far. I have finished the bottom half, obviously, and I am now transitioning to working on the top half. So I'm hoping that I will actually be able to finish this definitely by the end of the year. I would like to have it finished by the end of the year, and then potentially like do another project, because one cannot have too many projects ever. Ever. Yeah. One can have too many projects. I probably typically have too many projects. But that's okay, because I enjoy having too many projects and making my life chaos. Other people may not enjoy it as much as I do, but I do enjoy it. So I shall continue on with my life of chaos. What's a little chaos? But yeah, like I have a good section of just backstitch, which actually goes really fast for me. It's the actual cross stitch that takes forever. So, lost my wing nut. Put that back on. So, yep, I have a bunch of backstitch to do, and then a little bit of cross stitch at the top, and it will be done soon. Which then it becomes a new problem, because then I have to figure out what to do with it. So I have a number of like cross stitch projects that I've finished. And then it's like, okay, I have this really nice piece of fabric that I've spent so much time decorating. What do I do with it now? And I have a number that I have gone ahead and I've framed, and they're on the walls, but I do have limited wall space. Like, my walls are not unlimited, unlike the amount of projects that I can buy. So I need to figure out what else to do with these things. So I've been thinking about it, and I'm thinking potentially that I might do something like use this like as a decorative element for like a canvas bag, maybe like incorporating it into either a canvas bag or like a project bag. Because it would be nice actually to have a couple more like project bags that aren't random bags that I've stolen from other things around my house, and like have a really like make a really nice drawstring project bag to throw my knitting works in progresses into. Like if I have a big one, I have a couple of big ones. Like I have a large temperature blanket that hasn't had any work on it in like 2 years. Yeah. Anyways, skipping on the fact that I have a work in progress that is not been touched in quite a while, I do have a bunch of yarn that is associated with said project, and the current duffel that I have it stuffed into doesn't actually fit all of the yarn. So maybe creating like a really big like blanket sized project bag so that I can throw things into that. Like throw blankets. Blanket quantities of things can get put into blanket project bags, and like sweater quantities of things that I like have a pattern for and I know what I'm going to use this yarn for. Like put them into the bag, put them into a project bag. I may not cast on immediately, but at least have them organized so that I know this is what I was planning on doing with this. So I'm thinking that this would be a good way to like use this and like create some really unique project bags for myself that look really nice. Or it might not work with this particular one because it's so big. And it's not like it's a scene or anything. It's like, it's fairly wordy, so I think it should like stay by itself. But for some of my larger ones that I have like that are scenes, I might end up using them as like backing for like knitting needle cases, because I do need to make some knitting needle cases for myself and use that as a backing. Plans. Potential plans for things. Yeah. So that's kind of the wrap up for crafts that I've been doing other than knitting this month. If you have made it to this point, congratulations. You have just listened to me talk for an hour. Well, a little bit over an hour. If you enjoy this and you want to see more of it, feel free to like and subscribe. That would help the channel actually get bigger since most people have not liked, and I have one subscriber. Hi you! I'm guessing it's Paula. Hi Paula, thank you for subscribing. I'm glad that someone enjoys this enough to actually want to watch me more than once. If you have comments or suggestions, or you want to talk a bit and get to know me a little bit more, feel free to leave a comment below. If you want to quietly stalk me on Instagram, you can easily do that by following either at knTurnbull2, which is going to be a little bit more of my personal projects, or you can head over to Turnbull's threads, I believe it is. Those will both be linked below, as well as like knitting patterns. If I have a link to the pattern, I will throw the link to the pattern below. Obviously, I'll give you the name of the book, which the majority of the knitting patterns this month actually came from. So, one book. I'll give you that name down below, and like which specific patterns I pulled things from. But yeah, my Instagram deets will be down there as well if you like to low-key stalk me, i.e. see what I'm putting out. I do put out more of the like time-lapse. I do a lot more time-lapse on there. It won't be so much knitting, as it's going to be more likely to be a little bit more cross-stitch. I also do a bunch of my calligraphy and watercolor stuff on there as well in time-lapse form. And you can see random other pictures that I happen to throw up. Sometimes I throw up pictures of sunsets. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I throw pictures of my latest knits up there. Or you can obviously follow the one that's a little bit more my professional one, which is linked to the Etsy shop that I have, which I'm just trying to get rid of some of the things that I've made that I don't necessarily want to keep for myself. And yeah, so those details will be below. If you're interested, want to talk about something, feel free to comment in the comment section. Otherwise, have a great day. Have a great rest of the month. Hopefully I'll see you again in October. Enjoy!